Hello everybody, Calamity here. Sorry I kind of left you guys for a week there, and if you saw the weird stream last night, you saw nothing. Today's video is going to be about the banners that are still going on right now for about another week or so, and I thought I'd make a quick discussion video talking about MAUVIKA and CITLALI, just kind of discussing how I feel about them, and now that the hype train has left the station and the dust has settled and people have done their polls, are they worth pulling? Are they actually good? Can I skip them? Were they overhyped, etc, etc? How do they feel to play? And obviously I can't speak for everyone, I can only speak from my own experiences. And with that being said, I have mostly built both of these characters. CITLALI, on the other hand, needs better artifacts. I'm having trouble getting Elemental Mastery on her, but that's another story. But let's go ahead and talk about MAUVIKA first. So she is a Pyro on-field DPS, but can also be built for off-field. It is totally up to you which one you want to build her as. They're both viable, and this is probably where I would agree with the people that are like wanting artifact loadouts in Genshin. This is a character you could definitely vouch for loadouts, because sometimes you do want to optimize her for off-field, depending on what team, right? And then sometimes she's going to be your on-field DPS. Now, how is her damage compared to, let's say Hu Tao or Yoimiya? I would say it's pretty good. Pretty solid. She's not going to, like, outclass them by a lot. Her burst definitely does a lot of damage, especially if you get enough fighting spirit. It is basically a nuke button, which, other characters don't have. It is way more damage than, say, like Hu Tao's, burst herself. Big damage. But the majority of the time you'll be riding her bike, which I've heard more or less, different opinions on mixed up reviews on the bike, feeling clunky. Sometimes some are saying it's fun. Ultimately, I would say just do the trial, go on the bike, see how it feels to you, do all the kinds of different moves you can do on the bike. And remember, if you are pulling MAUVIKA for the bike and the mobility for ease of exploration, remember that this is only a Natland, where the bike can be used for much longer than normal. If you try to use the bike outside of Natland, you're going to be a little disappointed on how short it actually lasts. So it's very short. You are better off probably using other characters that are better for exploration, like Yelan, Cloud Retainer, Kazuha, depending on what kind of content you're exploring. But that being said, it is still going to be good enough to help you out here and there, and then you can just swap to a different character. Again, just riding a motorcycle itself is very unique, and unlike any other character we have in the game so far. So, up to you on whether or not you think she's worth pulling for the bike. I can't speak for everyone on that. But going back to her damage and her playstyle, she has multiple teams she can work with, especially if you're doing off-field, right? But she does perform better with Natland characters, which is kind of, I don't like that team restriction. You would prefer her to be good with everybody, regardless, but she will perform better with Natland characters because of the whole fighting spirit thing. So energy recharge is a completely wasted stat on her. It does nothing for her, because the way she obtains her burst is from normal attacks or from other characters doing Night Soul Blessing stuff, which is Natland characters. So if you have Natland characters doing normal attacks, you get twice the fighting spirit. So that nuclear button option that she has is always going to be, or at least consistently be, available for you, ready to use. Outside of that, though, she still does really good damage. She won't be competing for your Xingqiu or your Yelan, because her best rotation is to use her donut attacks or her charge attacks while on the bike, and that doesn't synergize with Xingqiu or Yelan, so you don't have to worry about that from pulling those two away from your Hu Tao, your Yoimiya, your Diluc, your Gaming, for example. She's fine there. You can pair up with CITLALI, of course. Both of them are on the banner. It does suck that they're together. I prefer them to be separate, but it's just how it is. Doesn't mean you have to use her, though. You can use her with characters like Rosaria if you still want to do melts. You can also pair her with Farina for damage buffs and hydro application, because her attacks, even though she's on a bike, they're actually kind of slow. Like, the charge attack donuts are not like constant like Yoimiya or Hu Tao. So it's a good attack interval to let your off-field elemental applicators do their thing, and then she can vaporize, melt, overcharge, whatever your elemental reaction of choice is. So even though she's not the best without her Natlan characters, she can still perform without them and still do a really good job of it. Now let's also quickly talk about her weapon. Do you need to pull it? Aesthetic reasons, yeah. But if we're talking about just gameplay, free to play friendly, I don't have a lot of gems. Do I really only pull it? Obviously, all of these weapons are going to be good for their, signature users. Of course, it's going to give you a lot more damage and stuff. But don't feel like you have to always pull for them. For Mauvika's build, you can get away with just giving her a DPS Claymore of anything. Like, what if you have any other 5 stars sitting around, or any even 4 stars. They will do a serviceable job. Again, new players, I'm sure your goal is just to explore and kill the enemies in the overworld, which isn't really hard to do, and Mauvika can do just that. You don't really need a 5-star weapon for that. Something else I want to point out is that I have seen some deceptive videos of Mauvika being shown saying stuff like, hey, she still has great mobility even outside of Natlan, guys. I think you guys are overreacting to that, blah, 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 blah. But what they don't tell you in those videos, at least some of them, is that Mauvika, they have her C6. And if you haven't read it yet, at the last bit right here, it says, additionally, when Mauvika is riding her Flame Strider, that's her motorcycle, and not in combat, when her Night Soul points drops to 5, she will regain 80 Night Soul points, and this can trigger once every 15 seconds. So what you can do is pair her with other Natlan characters, and switch to them, do their mobility thing, and then switch back to her, and then people are saying like stuff like, oh, see guys, look at all this mobility outside of Natlan. Well, this is a big reason for it. So if you are watching a video saying like she's still good for mobility and exploration outside, check to see if they have her C6. It's obviously not something that everyone can access, and it's very deceptive to say stuff like that on the internet. Knowing well that not all of us can afford a C6 Mauvika. So be wary of that if you are seeing that. She is, again, I have used her outside of Natlan, and it's not that great. The bike lasts not that long. It's like a short dash, honestly. Yu'lon's skill lasts longer. Well, maybe it lasts about as long as Yu'lon's skill. That being said, strong unit overall, and don't forget, even though she does get outclassed by Zhongling, in some ways, Zhongling does more pyro application more consistently, and possibly for even more damage, depending on the builds, right? Mauvika doesn't need her burst to apply pyro, right? That's one of the biggest downsides to Zhongling, is the constant need of energy recharge for best burst uptime, and even using other pyro characters like Bennett so that she can get even more energy. And stuff like that. With Mavuika, just tap the skill, and guess what? You got your off-field pyro application. That's all you need. So it's very easy to pull off. And it, again, like I said earlier, it gets the job done for your pyro application needs. It's not super consistent like Zhongling, but nobody's that consistent anymore in this game. So it'll be good enough. I would say if you're not happy with your pyro teams, let's say, Hu Tao isn't it for you, or you don't like Yoimiya's lack of AoE, then she's definitely worth considering as a pyro DPS character. But if you're happy with how your pyro teams are currently performing, then I honestly think you can skip her. But, she is an Archon, so expect her to be having a rerun pretty soon. I mean, Farina's already had 2 since her previous banner, or since her initial banner, so I expect Mavuika will be around pretty soon as well, even if you miss out this first banner. Can't say the same for the other character we're going to talk about, though, which is Citlali. Citlali is the cryo shielder / melt applicator on the team. Or, excuse me, not melt applicator. Cryo applicator on the team. Although, her biggest problem is that she doesn't do her cryo often enough to where you can melt it every hit with, say, characters again like Hu Tao or Yoimiya. It'll work though, like you'll see big spikes in damage, but her cryo application just can't keep up with certain um, pyro character attacks. I think a good combination that might be overlooked is Gaming, because Gaming doesn't always hit consistently and like fast all the time. He does like these big plunging attacks, which gives plenty of time for Citlali to apply her cryo. So she can be used. Again, it doesn't have to be Mavuika. You can use her with other pyro DPS characters. I've also seen some Yoimiyas use her with Citlali, and it seems to work decently enough, but I would recommend using another cryo applicator like Rosaria, just for more added application for more consistent melts. Mavuika is also really easy to play. For those that enjoy easy rotations, all you literally have to do is press her skill button, which gives you a shield, and then you press her burst button so that she can do her off-field cryo application, and that is it. You don't really use her normal attacks. You can upgrade these if you want because of the key animations and stuff like that, but save your resources first, go for the skill and burst instead. And for her signature weapon, again, just like other signature weapons before, it's really nice for her. It gives her a ton of EM, which is how she scales her her damage. But not necessary. In fact, if you want to make Citlali more of a support, you can give her Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Obviously, she's going to lose a bit of her own personal damage because no EM, and she's not HP scaling. But she will give a huge attack buff to your main DPS, as long as they actually can take advantage of attack stats, unlike, for example, Neuvillette, who is HP scaling. So that's an option there. You can, of course, give her a Sacrificial Fragments just because it's a stat stick with more EM. There are also other options. You can give her Prototype Amber, which makes her also a bit of a healer and regenerate energy for the team if that's something you need. Something just to consider. So yeah, she has plenty of free-to-play options. Don't feel like you have to get her weapon either as well. But she's a pretty straightforward character. Is her shield, you know, better than Zhongli's? Did she power creep the other old man in the game? And the answer is no. just straight up no. Zhongli's shield is still beefier. Nothing has beaten it yet in the many years Genshin has existed. But her shield is still strong enough to the point where most of the stuff you can ignore, like most of the attacks. I think the only thing that'll probably be scary are some of those hard-hitting, you know, like those Natland challenge bosses or those Fontaine local legends stuff that have really, really high stats and some really high, you know, bosses and stuff where you might have to worry about it. But other than that, you're chilling. And that's a pun intended. You are chilling in that shield. It's really sizable. Probably get around like 10,000 HP on the shield. More or less, maybe even more with some heavy investment. And that's honestly good enough, in my opinion. Also want to point out, if you are seeing Citlali showcases and you're seeing her do absurdly high damage, make sure you're checking again the constellations of the video or ask the person that posted it, because her C2 is really insane. It literally doubles, more than doubles her damage, I want to say, because she further reduces Pyro and Hydro Res, and she gives them 250 elemental mastery to other teammates, which is insane. That is an insane damage increase. So make sure people aren't inflating their numbers with constellations and making you think characters are way stronger than they actually are. She is still very, very strong at C0, with that being said. Also want to point out, yes, she is very limited when it comes to teams, because she only reduces, should be said here, yeah, she only reduces resistance of Pyro and Hydro, so she's better used for Melt or Freeze teams. If you want to use her with Neuvillette, that is a solid option. Or Mualani, also another solid option as well. But she will not work with, like, I mean, you can use her for Superconduct for physical damage teams, but she doesn't reduce physical resistance, unfortunately. So she can't really be used to the best of her abilities there, but it is an option if you want to do so. Other than that, if you're lacking shielders and you want someone that's going to boost your melt damage or your Hydro DPS damage dealers like Neuvillette, Mualani, Taglia even, possibly, consider pulling for Citlali. And I also want to just point out that her mobility outside of Natlan is okay. She's like similar to Kazuha, I guess, where she kind of does this like jump up in the middle of the air to give you some extra, you know, gliding time and stuff like that. And she has a unique gliding animation with her pillows. So if that's something you want to use, again, it's going to be all right outside of Natlan, excuse me. But in it, she'll allow you to glide very long distances very safely and comfortably. So very basic character. Does have a lot of usages, so if that is something that sounds good to you, definitely consider pulling for her. Do I think she's a must pull though? Not really. Again, stuff like Hyper Bloom, Vaporize all still do the job. It's not like she's making them irrelevant just because she hits hard. It's just like Nilo Bloom teams, right? Nilo Bloom teams are really, really strong, but do you need to have Nilo? Do you need to pull for her? Do you have to use her to do well in this game? Not really. Actually, not at all. But it's up to you. If you find her fun or if you just like the character, then Citlali is a solid option to consider. And yeah, I've already stated different weapons you can use for her if you want. And that's pretty much going to be a wrap on this video. If anyone else has their own 2 cents they want to share on Mavuika or Citlali, do you like these characters? Do you think they were worth your pulls, or they are just alright? Because to me, Mauvika and Citlali are both very strong characters, but let's say, I didn't have the gems to get both of them and their weapons. Would I feel like I missed out? A bit, but I would still be able to get by if I had, if I didn't get these characters and I had what I already had on my account. I would be still okay to complete stuff like Imaginary Theater and Spiral Abyss. Remember that in my Imaginary Theater guide, I was able to beat it without using either Mavuika or Citlali, so definitely doable. But I'm sure these 2 characters will make the endgame a lot more easier if you're struggling. With that being said, don't forget to leave a like and or subscribe to the channel. We'll be making more Genshin content in the future. And thank you so much for watching and hanging out. And see you on the next one.